go over turn one, because turn one isn't actually what you think turn one is. It's actually this, which is in the corner, so let's not dwell on that. So turn two. Turn two, which really should be called turn one. This one right here. And what I I'm sorry. I have something in my throat.
Just having all kinds of technical difficulties tonight. You can get a drink of water, or we can restart, or whatever. No problem. It's all the pressure of.
Yeah. For turn two, default weather, you're sort of breaking it around this white marker on the right side. And a little trick a lot of people don't seem to use is you can use a bit of the of this concrete on the right side and not get an off track. As long as you don't hit the dirt before the concrete starts, you don't get an off track. So you can just make the track that tiny bit wider by using the concrete. So in default weather, you're breaking it around this white marker. So right now it's a bit colder, quite a bit colder. So you can break a bit later as well. But the main thing about the braking for this corner is that you sort of want to divide it into two sections. The first one, you want to be aiming towards the middle of the track as you're braking in a straight line. So you're at a bit of an angle as you start braking. Again, aiming sort of towards the middle of the track. And as you start approaching the first apex of turn two, which will have two apexes, you want to release the brakes a bit, just to let the car turn that much better. So you just want to release the brakes, hit this first apex, and just carry as much speed as you can, and avoid using the throttle between the first and the second apex. And by the time you see your exit for the second apex, you can just gun it as soon as you can. But the main thing is to just maintain that speed through between the two apexes and avoid getting on the throttle between them. So just brake once and get on the throttle once, and not do anything in between. Then later for turn three, I'm taking this turn in third gear. I think a few people are probably using second, but I find even in default weather, which is way less grippy, I think third is better, and in colder weather it's definitely better. So just try to keep it in third gear, and for this corner in specific, you really want to use the brakes to help the car turn a bit. You're not really braking very hard to slow the car down. You're braking more to get some weight on the front tires and get some bites in the front tires and help you turn in. And again, for all of these corners, it's sort of a rule of thumb. I think there's two rules of thumb for Laguna Seca. Every time you have an entry curb like this one on the outside of the track, use as much as you can of it, just to make the track that tiny bit wider, and it really does help to maintain as much speed as you can through the corner. So here again, you want to use all of the entry curb, and all of the apex curb and all of the exit curb, but a lot of people seem to miss that and don't really use as much as the width of the track as they can. Then for the second rule of thumb for Laguna Seca is those red bumps at the apex of corners behind the actual curb. Never touch those. They're evil. They're really high, and they'll really upset the balance of the car. So really try to avoid those for every corner. All right, so for turn four right here, this is around the point at which you'd want to start a turn in. A few people lift, and a few people brake. I think lifting, you have to wait a lot more to be able to get on the throttle, because you're just waiting for the car to rotate. Whereas if you use a tiny bit of brake, not before you turn in, but just as you turn in, or even a tiny bit later, it'll really help the car turn in. And so what I'm using basically as a turn-in reference is just that white triangle right in front of the car. So as soon as it starts is pretty much where I'm turning in. And again, I'm using a tiny bit of the brake, a very, very tiny bit, just to get the car rotated, and use all the curb on the apex, and obviously all of the curb on the exit. Yeah. So turn 5 has some quirks because it has different camber along the width of the track, so which really changes your line through it a bit. So really, you want to be braking a tiny bit after this white marker on the right. Again, using all the curb, keeping it in a straight line. And you want to turn in a tiny bit earlier than you think you have to turn in, just because there's a bit more camber towards the inside of the track. So if you go a bit wide, you'll have to slow down a lot more to make the corner. So you want to turn in relatively early and use all of these. You really want to ride this inside curb for quite the distance. So now turn 6, which is by far the corner people hate the most at this track, including me. What I use as a turn in slash brake marker is just, I don't really have a reference. I think it's easiest, instead of have a reference, as soon as you go past the 2 marker, you really want to be looking all the way over the crest on the road, over the tiny hill. You really want to be looking at the apex already, ever since you go past that 2 marker on the right, and roughly halfway between the 2 marker and the white line on the right, you want to be turning it and braking at the same time. I think it really helps to do both at the same time instead of braking and then turning in. Because just the fact that you're braking as you're turning in gives you tons and tons more rotation. And for this corner, again, I think it's better to keep it in a higher gear. So I personally keep it in 4th gear, and it makes it a lot easier to carry speed through the corner. But again, don't touch the red bump on the inside, and you're always going to end up using all of that exit curb and even a tiny bit of the sand. All right. Next up is turn 7. Again, it's a bit of a kink, not really a turn, but it's actually really important because how you take this really influences how much speed you can carry down the corkscrew. What a lot of people do is all the way from back here, roughly at the end of this curb on the left side, they start to turn in. But I find it really helps to turn in quite a bit later, even after that white line on the outside. Just give it a few more meters, and then you start to turn in a bit more sharply. But that way, you just ensure that you start braking for the corkscrew in a straight line, and you keep the car a bit further to the right of the track. But you don't really have to keep it all the way to the right of the track. You can aim it a tiny bit towards the middle of the track, but maybe 2/3 of the track. But you don't want to be aiming at the apex as you turn in. So just by delaying the turn in for turn 7, you'll end up going down the corkscrew a whole lot better. And the main thing down the corkscrew is a lot of people seem to treat it as a chicane, in that you're turning left and then right as you go down the hill. And it's actually quite a lot faster to turn left just once, and then you keep the car straight. Obviously, it's really hard because you can't see the rest of the corner. But once you've practiced it enough, you can sort of imagine where it is. And simply after that first apex, you can just keep the wheel straight, and you should go right over and hit that apex going down the hill. And you want to keep the car as far right as you can for this part, and turn in really early. Again, pretty similar to turn 5. There's quite a bit more camber towards the inside of this corner, so you want to turn in really, really early and keep the car pretty tight throughout the whole corner. And you'll get so much more grip that way. By this curb, you can generally get on the throttle completely. you don't need to use all of the space on the right side because you need to come back to the left side. For this corner, I sort of start braking just a tiny bit before that first 2 marker, basically where the curb starts on the left side. I start braking a tiny bit and also dragging the brakes a tiny bit as I turn in, just to get that extra bit of turn in. And again, there's a bit more camber on the inside, so really try to use it and really try to hit that apex curb. And finally, for the last corner, the first rule of thumb I went over was use all of the entry curbs, but I think this is the only exception in the track. Because for this corner, you're braking really, really hard, and you're going quite fast, and you're braking really, really hard for a tight turn. So it's better for this turn to not use the entry curb on the right side as you brake. Otherwise, you end up needing more distance to slow the car down, just because of the vibration limits how much grip you get out of the tires as you're braking. But I brake probably 2/3, maybe 3/4 of, I mean, a third of the way between the 2 marker and the first and the 1 marker. But I keep it on the tarmac at first, and afterwards I'm sort of braking at a diagonal. You don't really have to do this, but it's marginal how much it helps, but it helps a tiny bit. I brake sort of at a diagonal and end up running over the entry curb at the end of the braking zone once I'm not braking as hard. And you want to brake quite a lot and really slow the car down for this corner and really think about how early you can get on the throttle as opposed to how much speed you can carry through the corner. So really you're gonna be wanting to turn in pretty late, a bit later than you think, and that way you should be able to get on the throttle maybe even a tiny bit before you hit this apex curb. And you can use all of this curb on the outside, and even maybe two tire widths over the green astroturf on the outside. And that's the lap. And last thing, it's a tiny thing, but it is a few hundredths, and every hundredth, maybe not even a hundredth, but a few thousandths, just down the straight. If you keep it as tight to the inside as you can, you'll gain a tiny bit of time. Just try to not. You don't really have to be brushing the wall, but just try to not ride this edge of the track. But yeah, that's the lap. Unless anyone has any questions, I'll do 2 fast laps, 2 flyers.
No questions, but just for those who don't know, one trick there at the top of the corkscrew when you're trying to hit that second apex, there's sort of a line of 3 trees. If you point your nose at the one on the far right, then you should hit the apex. Just a marker so you know where it is before you can see it.
Yeah. Anything else? Questions, comments, or should I get going?
Can someone just ask John to hold on, if you don't mind, and if he doesn't hear it? I already tapped it in chat, but I don't have my chat set up. Ask him if he could hold off for a second. John Weschler. Or maybe it won't matter. He might not get in your way.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
He's on
coming
right
up
now.
behind me, but
He'll be fine. Okay. Okay.
Ow!
Nice.
Probably damaged my front wing, but
Yes, you did.
all right. There's an actual flyer. So easy to get off tracks at this track.
I've noticed.
You like that red one, even though you told us no.
Do as he says, not as he does.
Exactly.
All right. It was a little bit better, not a very good lap, but should do. If anyone wants to stick around, I'll just do an extra one.
Yeah.
Having a missing front wing probably isn't helping your lap time any.
Even though you took first, I hate the aliens sometimes, right? It's not a really good lap, but I am in first.
Sometimes the truth hurts.
Exactly. Oh, true.
Alright. It was a lot better, but still.
Nice.
Oh,
Well,
no.
there's your nice. So, thanks. Well,
Oh,
well, actually,
I have no
should let
front
you
wing.
do any follow-ups before I jump in. Any questions, guys?
I just want to say thanks for that.
Very helpful.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank
And
you.
throughout the session, if you guys have any questions as you start driving the track,
Cool.
free to let me know.
And just a reminder for those who might have just joined, Johnny is one of the actual trainers on the channel, so feel free to reach out to him for lessons if you're interested. I know from experience that it can help immensely. So, and then we'll, for those of you who just joined, get warmed up, and then we'll go to the more of the in-traffic stuff to get going. I'm going to let, I guess, Casey and Joe lead that because I'm not in my car, so I just joined remotely tonight.
I don't think I'm going to get my 2.5 out of you this time.
Not with that
Ooh.
attitude.
Exactly. It's I think I can. I think I can. Yeah, I like that. Not with that attitude.
I
mister.
think I can wall.
And most of the time, you'll probably find it the corkscrew. And turn 6, that left-hander going up the hill with a
Hey.
nasty bump.
Okay.
Personally, I think I'm okay at the corkscrew. It's I don't know, based on what I saw there, it seems like under braking there is where I'm losing most of my time there. I gotta trail brake better.
Yeah, it really, there's a few corners where trail braking helps so much. But turn 5, if you don't trail brake, you just understeer so much. But again, it's pretty similar for turn 3 as well.
Yeah, I think I'll pick up a lot of time doing that.
Yeah, those particular corners, it really helps quite a lot. And you have to be just really, maybe not right now because it's pretty cold, but in default weather, as long as you're just tiny bit light and on the brakes, just as you're approaching the apex,
Just to get it to turn
you're
in.
really just brushing them as you're approaching the apex. You're not really ramping off of them as much as you're just maintaining a really low pressure.
Yeah. Well, let's give it a go and see if I can pick up some time. Thanks, Johnny.
Yep.